It seems the Taylor Swift tax is not the only thing bugging property owners, especially landlords in Narragansett. There we go. You don't get a second take on Dan York's State of Mind. You got to get it right the first time. How is everybody? Good to have you in. Thank you very much for tuning in to the broadcast. Yeah, the Taylor Swift tax, as it's become known, is really bothering people who, are in the business of real estate investment. Landlords, everyday people who rent property to students at URI, beach houses, that kind of thing. And we have a gentleman from Narragansett 2100 Inc., an organization that's been formed by landlords down in Narragansett to say, hey, we got some problems here. And it's not just with the Taylor Swift tax. There's a local property tax movement that looks like it's headed for their heads. And I'm not so sure it's constructive. So that'll be our conversation tonight. It is great to have you aboard. Thank you so much for tuning in to My State of Mind. I am Dan York, and we shall move to the rundown. No new taxes. Always the claim. It's so phony because they hide them these days. Oh, explain. In terms of the city of Providence, which is what the first line is about, the second line is like, hey, we're here. You want to put a stadium in our place, you probably got to pay attention to us a little bit. We have the argument, ladies and gentlemen. It's about the pensions. And there's a little story in the paper today that's not such a little story. And I'll explain to you why it's not such a little story. You ought to pay attention to it. This is it is ridiculous. Can we get our act together in Westerly and maybe other communities when it comes to accounting for the cost of student lunches? And of course, his former honorable, was on Fox last night. He's running. Your state of mind is important to us. Of course, we'd like to get your feedback. Let's dig in here. All right, on the no new taxes concept. The Elorza budget was introduced by the brand fine new mayor there, Jorge Elorza, last night, and it's $696 million. And, isn't it funny that the newly elected official always is going to do it better than the one before, although they always say, in this particular case, Elorza told you that the former mayor was phenomenal, but obviously he didn't do anything right because we got to do it better. Well, here it is.
We need to manage the city better and spend our resources more wisely if we are to put this city on a sustainable path, and that's what this budget does.
But how come the former guy was good? Do you ever ask that question? I'm sure you're so sick of politics, you ask that question all the time. But the idea that there's no new taxes is great news. And my response is, come on, man. Have you seen the fees that they're going to introduce? There's always a way to skin a cat and forecast and broadcast and headline that you're not raising taxes. Even the parking fees will go up, which I don't think is good for the economy of Providence. They are, though, going to make sure all the meters are on credit card, which at least will make the exorbitant fees easier to pay. Of course, there's a cost with credit card transactions, so we'll pay for that too when we go to a ball game. Anyway, when it comes to the city of Providence, it's getting ridiculous, and this op-ed piece in the Providence Journal today kind of highlighted the kind of a, hey, we're here type of thing. Sam Zurier, the city council president, I'm sorry, he's not the city council president. City council president can't figure out how to file his paperwork with the Board of Elections and owes $40,000 worth of fines, but that's a whole nother conversation. That headline, city can toss out Paw Sox owners, was kind of like a, veiled what's the word I'm looking for? Metaphorical, is that okay? Threat. You had to read the op-ed piece. It was strewn with baseball metaphors. But the counselor is saying, hey, look, by the way, you want to bring the stadium into our city, you probably ought to talk to us. This whole thing has been so discombobulated that formal talks with Providence city government aren't happening. And now they want to pass a resolution to actually call for a meeting. Think about that. They're going to make a government formal vote asking for a meeting with the Paw Sox ownership. Mr. Zurier was on the radio with me today.
I would expect they did plan on meeting with us eventually. As I suggested in my op-ed, I think they were planning on waiting until they had enough momentum so that we'd be forced into making a decision, or else appear to be losing the Paw Sox. If a deal has been worked out which is not fair to the city of Providence, then I believe personally it's my responsibility as a representative of the city of Providence to object to the deal.
Probably. This is amazing to me. And since Monday in the 195 Redevelopment Commission meeting with the owners of the Paw Sox and the first formal conversation with the state, things have been very quiet. Have you noticed? For something that's got to move along so fast for eventual General Assembly approval in June, I can feel the smoke is kind of just burning with the phone lines and the meetings behind closed doors happening as we speak. Somehow, though, they're going to have to get in front of Providence government, because at the end, Providence government can spoil the whole project. It's been a really weird protocol and apparatus the entire way. Next item, I just wanted to mention to you that you should read this story on page B6 of the Providence Journal today, because this is huge when it comes to the state pension deal. Here's the headline. I looked at this today and I thought, this is interesting. What is the speaker looking to get advice on? And it turns out he's looking to get advice from the Supreme Court on whether or not, follow this now, the pension settlement and the ensuing legislation that would enact it would be binding on future General Assemblies. It's a fascinating question. It's the essential question, for heaven's sake. Nick Mattiello is asking, essentially the question would be whether or not referencing the proposed legislation in the final judgment entered by the court creates a new additional contract right to the benefits that are being conferred in the legislation. There's an open question as to whether or not it binds the General Assemblies or the state to the benefits as contained in the legislation. What he's really asking is, okay, if this is if because the courts got involved with the settlement, does it make it stick more? Does it mean more of a contract with the state employees? If the answer is no from the Supreme Court, then you know what? All this, you'll never have to visit it again, is hooey, which is what I've been telling you the entire time. If the answer is yes, that it's binding on future General Assemblies, then they can't pass this because they don't want to bind future General Assemblies from reacting to market conditions. Remember, the statutes create the pension, not a contract. And although that may have been, the implied contract argument may have won preliminary proceedings to get the case alive in Superior Court, the eventuality that it wouldn't go that way was why the special master, Frank Williams, the former chief of the Supreme Court, tried to convince everybody to settle because they wouldn't win. Do you understand all this? The essential part of the litigation, which asked the question, is this a contract or not, was never answered because we got a settlement. But the preliminary question will get the answer in part anyway. Read the story, you'll get it. It's just this circle with this pension controversy, and everyone is avoiding the inevitable. We need a definitive jurisdictional decision as to whether the Constitution prevails. Okay, now that I've confused you completely with all of that, read the story, you'll get it. Let's go to something really silly. A menu controversy in Westerly. Here's the headline. This lady's making a big stink. She was on the radio with Gene the other day on WPRO. She's very upset. I guess her daughter went to the school lunch line, got her hot lunch. Her account was $100 in arrears, or in arrears. And I guess the savvy cafeteria owner took the plate and said, can't have it, you got to have your cold cheese lunch. This is all because Westerly's been moving to this new program with ample warning to the parents, some of whom didn't get it.
Some parents outraged about what's happening during lunchtime at Westerly Public Schools.
They're humiliated. We are here to protect our children, to build them up, not embarrass them.
Holly Gingerella is one of those parents. On Monday, a new school lunch policy went into effect. If a parent's balance is negative $10 or more, the student will receive a lunch consisting of a cheese sandwich, fruit, and milk. This will be in place of a full hot lunch.
Completely ridiculous.
All right. Well, listen, I'm not so worried about the little one being so humiliated. We're so worried about our kids being humiliated. A little humiliation goes a long way in terms of learning life's lessons. But if you want to make the system, first of all, it seems like the system did everything they can to warn parents about the idea that this new program was coming up. This lady didn't get it. Okay, well, that happens. What they probably should do is put the register at the front of the line. So when a kid comes through, it's like, hey, guess what, Sally? You don't have your thing paid, so you're going to get the cold lunch. Oh, okay. As opposed to you walk through, you get your hot lunch, then you got it, you didn't pay, and then they dump it. By the way, there are people starving in this world. We shouldn't be dumping hot lunches. Doesn't that make any sense? Okay. Chafee on Fox. Speaking of making sense. Yeah, he was on O'Reilly. He was, I guess, reasserting that he's going to run, and then he just kept arguing about Iraq, and O'Reilly made a mess of him.
So, are you going to run against Hillary? It's very likely. I'm in the exploratory phase, but it's very likely I'm going to make it official. So we wanted to be very careful about getting into another quagmire. So we all should have been extra careful. Okay. And you say, oh, that was
but really,
2002.
Senator, if you're going to run
but
on
look
that,
at what's happening with
if you're going to run on that, I don't
ISIS.
know if that's going to be enough.
Look what's happening with Boko Haram.
O'Reilly's got a technique where he just talks over you all the time. I mean, I know how hard it could be sometimes. But he doesn't care, which is the only way you deal with Link Chafee. You just keep talking over him. But I guess he's really running, and it's all going to be about Iraq, which means he'll never move off his reported 2%. But he'll do some damage to the reputation of Rhode Island now, won't he? Your state of mind is important to us. Call us at 228-1886. Email us, tweet at us, Facebook post. This particular response is a Facebook. No wonder you were so in the can for Healy. That must be me. You were way too nice to her. That must mean the governor. You wanted her all along. Hint, Dan, she's a huge disappointment as someone who was a huge failure as treasurer. She lost us $1 billion loan. Was I too nice to the governor? Well, first of all, I mean, she's the governor, and I respect her. What do you want me to do? Throw her out? What do you want me to do? What's too nice? You can't please all the people all the time in this business. But I wasn't in the can for anybody. And by the way, I didn't even vote in the governor election because I didn't have a candidate. I told you that. When we come back, the trials and tribulations of trying to run a landlord business in Narragansett. Stay with us. All right, so a buddy of mine sent me an email the other day, and until I got through it, I couldn't even figure out that he was a buddy of mine. And then I figured, oh, he's got a house in Narragansett. Isn't that nice? So here's an excerpt of it. He was telling me about the proposed budget and the state property tax on high-end rentals, and also some other challenges in Narragansett. And rather than reading emails to you on television, I'm going to talk to Ray Kagels, who is assigned by my friend to come here and tell the story of what's going on in Narragansett. Ray, nice to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in and all that kind of stuff. What is Narragansett 2100 Inc.? You're the president of it. Mr.
Yes.
President. How are you?
It's a group of landlords that came together, organized, and in response to a lot of things that are happening right now in Narragansett. And basically, we want to have a dialogue with the town. We love living in the town. Some of us live there, some are from the outside, but we love being there. It's a great town, good town council. And there are some things that have been done over the years that we don't necessarily agree with, but we want to work with the town to solve some of the social problems.
Do you live in town?
I do.
You do, okay. You have rental property there?
Yes, I do.
How many?
My family has 7. I have my own 2.
Okay. Well, let's not be obsequious about this. Let's get right down to it. First of all, I'm guessing the Taylor Swift tax you're no fan of, correct?
Not at all, no.
You're probably buoyed by the idea the speaker's not too excited about it either. The governor was here the other night, and we recorded an extra segment, which will appear maybe next week, where she kind of, ends up being somewhat tentative about it. This has not been her best moment. But the idea of a statewide property tax, I think, is worrisome to everybody, right?
Well, I think it is, and a lot of the landlords are also concerned about the related tax item that's with it, the motel tax and the sales tax. Some landlords already pay that. I do, but most don't have to because they own a single home, or 1 or 2 homes. They're not subject to that.
Tell me how that breaks down. What distinguishes one who has to pay taxes and one who doesn't?
We were determined by the Department of Revenue many years ago to be a tourist camp, and therefore subject to that tax. And it's 13% total, 7 for one and 6 for the other. So that gets paid. We don't have any choice. We have to pay it. Most landlords only have 1 or 2 houses. They don't pay that tax.
Well, how many houses do you have to own to pay it?
Well, we have 7, and because we operate them together as a unit, they decided we're a tourist camp. Now, I never challenge that. I don't know whether it's really legitimate, but we pay the tax.
I'm
But what they're
confused. I
trying
mean,
to expand
what
it
what
now
if you had
to.
3? You don't.
You would have to pay the tax, and
Well, is there not to belabor the point, but is there a defined number of homes that you have to
yes,
be
1 or 2, you don't have to pay it.
2 or less?
2 or less.
Okay, I get it. Or maybe I wasn't paying attention. Okay. So you're already paying that tax.
Yes, but most landlords are not. The vast
This new
majority
legislation or this new budget calls for more folks to pay that tax.
everybody
Yes.
on short-term rentals, 30 days or less.
Meaning the folks that you've been renting to for vacation for all this time.
Right, it'll hit the tourists. It's really aimed at the tourists, not the students.
Not good.
Not good for tourism.
No. Yeah, I'm not sure the governor, when she put this program together, knew what the ramifications would be. I think she was thinking big-time multimillionaires on the ocean, Taylor and her friends, her new friends, and they can
Right,
give
that's
it-
the property tax.
Yeah.
That's the one they're trying to hit.
Right, but along with it is this additional, I mean, it's all part of the same program.
It is.
Yeah, and it's not palatable to you guys. But you have a different challenge as well in
Well,
the
we
town of
do.
Narragansett.
We have local challenges, and after a fairly serious party last May, which is referred to by some folks as a riot in Eastwood Look, the town put together, town council appointed an ad hoc group to come up with, to get public input on some of the issues regarding student problems in town. And they've gone on to develop some proposals that are still in the development stage. They'll be coming out, probably in June, maybe early July, with their proposals. We have some sense of what they're heading for, but we haven't seen the final ones yet.
But you're worried they're going to whack you with a big time hit on your property taxes.
Well, not them necessarily. There is also at the same time going, the Economic Development Council has, or committee rather, has proposed a Homestead Act in Narragansett, which is what would hit landlords. What they call bona fide residents are exempt from it and wouldn't have to pay that tax, but they want to have landlords and anyone less than a year-round renter pay, an increased tax, 50% increase over the residential rate.
What?
Yeah,
How much?
50%,
5-0.
5-0. That's the proposal. That's not what the town is doing. They haven't accepted it yet.
Well, you're
But
here.
it's up before
You're
the
here
town
to
council.
shout
Yeah.
fire in a not so crowded theater yet, but you're here to cause somebody to talk about it.
It's a pretty dramatic thing for landlords to have to deal with. Yeah.
Why single you folks out?
Um,
Because you
I
rent to
think the
kids that make a mess?
I really believe the people proposing that are looking to get a tax advantage, use this crisis, so-called, of student problems, to get a tax advantage for themselves over other people, find other people to pay for
But
it.
here's the thing. I'm trying to figure out if Narragansett in totality, and it's hard to make a generalization, is a volunteer partner to house URI students, or there's an economy in housing URI students down there.
That's right.
Why bite that hand at this level? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, it doesn't make any sense, and keep in mind, these are just proposals. It's not something that the town council has developed. They're going to look at them. On both ends, both this ad hoc committee's recommendations and also the Economic Development Committee. They haven't been adopted yet, but we're watching them very closely.
All right, more thoughts on this, and what's the atmosphere like down there these days? We'll talk about it when we come back to it. Ray Kagels is the president of Narragansett 2100. I'm having one of those days. Talking about the economic conditions in Narragansett, the challenge of being a property owner, an investment landlord, and the like. What's the atmosphere like down there these days? Are you renting mostly to URI students? By the
No,
way?
I rent almost entirely to tourists.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not even one of the landlords that is what? Serving the troublemakers, for lack of a better term.
I don't rent to students, that's correct.
But there are student renters in this group that you guys have organized.
Oh, certainly,
correct?
absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Y'all kind of feel like you're one for all and all for one sort of thing?
Well, what we want to do is work with the town to try to solve some of those problems in the neighborhoods. They are significant problems, and we recognize that. And we think working with landlords rather than against them, the town can really benefit from the whole thing. And the town's been pretty receptive
Well,
to
I think
that
that
idea.
makes sense. You brought a chart. We like charts. We like audio visuals here. So that kind of medium. What is this chart?
Basically, this is the last chart that was developed, or I developed the chart, but the statistics came from the URI Narragansett Coalition back in 2011 when it dissolved. On the left-hand side there is the total, 100% is 100% of rental properties in Narragansett, which is about this year 2,740. There are different numbers, but that seems to be what the last one I heard anyway. In that, we looked at total police responses, and back in '09 it was about 7%. That's gone up to 10% this year. In homes that were responded to, individual homes, almost 5% back in '09. I don't have statistics on that now. No action. Police will go out to a problem and they don't take any action. That was about 4% of the total calls. And 2% was the actual nuisance homes that got the orange stickers.
The kids.
The kids.
All right. Okay, so what does this chart mean, and what's the trend?
Well, the trend is that 2% is the big focus. Where are the nuisance homes? And that's dropped to under 2% now, as of these statistics.
There was a big crackdown after the big party last year. I mean,
Well,
we covered it here. There was a whole big to-do.
There
I'm
was,
told it's
and
a lot quieter this year.
It's had a real effect. Yesterday's statistics show the total noise complaints in the last couple of years are up over 500. This year they're 276 up to this point. Now they don't include May yet, and that's usually there's going to be more. But the number of stickers issued is 35, which is about 1.5% of the total. So that's really dropped.
All right. So give me the executive summary on what your mission is with Narragansett 2100 and what you want to see happen.
We want to help the town resolve the problems, and but we don't want to do the same kind of old things that haven't worked. The town had us all register as landlords. That didn't make kids stop drinking. They want to reduce the number of people that can live in one house. That's not going to stop parties. They believe it is, but it's not. They want to put in parking restrictions. And I had one lady that wrote to me recently, I'll have to sell my house. I have 3 students who rent from me, and I only have parking for 2, but I make other arrangements
Well,
for the
you're telling me
third
what doesn't work. What will work?
I think what will work is perhaps work out some sort of moratorium with the landlords. One of the problems is they have a lot of residences that are believed not to comply with the building codes. And they're safety problems. They're real safety issues for the town. And that's one of the things we can work on to get those houses in compliance.
All right, you know what we'll do? We'll try to get a hold of Narragansett, come back and maybe follow up on this, because I think this is a fascinating conversation. We're out of time right now, but you've got a website, right?
No, we don't.
Or an email address, something.
Email address. We communicate totally by email.
There you go. The old-fashioned way,
Yeah.
email. Ray, thanks for coming in.
Okay, thank you.
All right, one more thing and we come back. See you later. Coming up on tomorrow night's show, we'll take a look at this marijuana debate. It's no doubt front and center here in Rhode Island. We're not talking about medical marijuana. We're talking about just easing restrictions in a big-time way. So you'll want to be tuned in for that. See you on the radio tomorrow at noon, too, on WPRO. Good night.